Okay, so now that we've worked on how to hold the bow properly, the next step is how to rosin your bow. Now, like I mentioned earlier, rosin is one of the most important and essential ingredients in your set. And generally, when you buy your violin, whether it's a beginner violin or a student violin, you buy it as a set, most likely, and it will come, of course, with its own violin case, your violin, your bow, a shoulder rest, and many times it will also come with a little rosin just like this one. And today we're going to talk exactly about how to use the rosin, what to do, what not to do, and why you need to do it. And one of the first things you need to keep in mind is that when you first get your bow with a brand new set of bow hair, sometimes it's not going to be rosined. I particularly, when I change my bow hair, I ask the bow maker not to rosin the hair because I like to do it myself. And the point is that if your bow hair doesn't have any rosin on it, it cannot really produce enough friction to grip the string and create a sound, so it's not going to make any sound. And so that's why then you need to get your rosin, rub it on the bow hair a few times to help it get enough friction to produce a tone. Think of it like a rock climber who, before he starts climbing the rock wall, he dips his hand in a little pouch with powder so that he can get better grip. That's kind of the same principle here. And the way to do that, first of all, is you're going to take your rosin. There's many different types of rosin, but they all look generally the same. They're made of basically hardened resin. So you're going to take it, and you'll see at many points, many people are going to teach you to rub the bow repeatedly like this across the entire length of the hair until you get to the end, and do that a few times. But I find that that generally leaves a lot of uneven pockets of residue on the bow, which could eventually turn into uneven sound as well. So the way I like to do it, and the way I encourage all my students to do it, is by actually doing long strokes from one end to the other, so that you get an even distribution of rosin all across the bow. Now, you might as well just profit and hold the bow the right way while you do it to practice, and you draw the bow slowly across the entire length of the hair on the surface of the rosin. While you do this, you'll notice that there's a little bit of white powder that accumulates on the hair, and that's exactly what you want. You want that little bit of residue to be evenly distributed across the entire length of the bow so that it evenly grips the string as you draw the bow on your violin. Now, another very important point is how many times should you rosin your bow? Should you do it every day, every time you practice, a couple of times a month, a couple of times a week? And that's all vastly going to depend on how much you actually practice. And my personal opinion is that if you would, for example, practice every day between 30 minutes to an hour, you'd be more than fine doing this every 2 to 3 days. If you do, for example, 2 or 3 long strokes across the rosin. The reason for that is because I personally don't like excessive rosin use, because the sound can get a little bit sandy, a little bit too aggressive. So I lean much more on the side of using less rosin to allow the sound to be smoother and suppler all throughout the bow. So me, for example, if I were to practice, let's say 1 hour a day, I would rosin my bow every other day, doing perhaps a couple of passes, one down, one up, just to ensure that there's just enough grip on the string. Anything beyond that, then you start getting a little bit too much buildup of rosin on your strings and on the surface of your violin, which, if it's not properly taken care of, could eventually cause damage on the varnish or damage on the strings themselves. So if you're worried about whether you're using too much rosin or too little rosin, just think that at the moment you start to play and you feel that your bow is slipping a little bit too much on the surface of the strings, or you're not producing any sound, then it might be time to rosin your bow a little bit. And of course that also means that every time after you finish practicing your violin, it's important to wipe it down to remove any excess and any buildup of rosin, so that your violin will have a happier, longer life.